The storm crawled over the northern base like something alive, and a 35-year-old Marine with tired eyes felt danger approaching long before anyone else. Beside him, a 4-year-old German shepherd stiffened, ears raised, breath sharp, as if the wind carried a scent that should not exist. Deep inside the barracks, a young female Marine walked with a hidden wound across her abdomen. Each step a quiet reminder of the night she saved 2 children, but lost the respect of her own unit. Her superior watched her with cold disdain, punishing her not for failure, but for courage he could never understand. Only one man noticed her pain, standing silent in the hall while his K9 leaned forward, sensing the weight she carried in her trembling hands. Then came the sound, slow, dragging, impossible. A rhythm she knew from a ghost she believed had died the night he carved those scars into her skin. And before this story begins, tell us where you're watching from today. And don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel. The northern base of Northwind woke every morning in a pale blue haze, the kind of cold that did not bite so much as seep quietly into the bones. Snow lay across the pine fields like folded linen, perfectly still until the wind arrived to scatter it. At sunrise, the only movement came from a tall Marine in a weathered Marpat uniform and the German shepherd at his heel. Staff Sergeant Wyatt Cole, 35, walked with the steady cadence of a man who had spent more years deployed than at home. He had a strong, quiet build. Broad shoulders carried without arrogance, jaw square with a faint shadow of stubble he rarely bothered to shave clean, and eyes the muted gray-blue of a winter storm. People often said he looked like he was listening even when no one was talking. They weren't wrong. Silence had shaped him more deeply than any battlefield. Beside him, Rook, his 4-year-old German shepherd, moved with the alert precision of a creature raised between discipline and instinct. The dog's sable black and gray coat shimmered under the morning light, patches of snow clinging to his fur like dusted sugar. Rook sniffed the wind every few seconds, ears rotating with radar-sharp awareness. Unlike most trained K9s, who followed commands first and intuition second, Rook often acted like he felt things before they happened. Danger, tension, lies, grief. Wyatt pretended not to notice, but he had long accepted that the dog sometimes understood the world better than humans did. Northwind was a place designed for efficiency, not beauty. Rows of barracks, metal stairwells, steaming vents, and the gray box of the training center. But on mornings like this, even steel looked gentle under frost. Wyatt preferred patrols at dawn because the quiet let him think. Not about war, about her. The new arrival everyone whispered about. By the time Wyatt and Rook reached the main yard, a group of Marines was already forming a loose half-circle near the barracks. Their voices carried that thin, brittle edge only gossip could sharpen. She shouldn't even be here. Lucky she wasn't court-martialed. 1 screw-up and 2 men dead. And now Northwind gets to babysit her? Wyatt didn't respond. He rarely did. Rook, however, slowed his steps, ears pricking forward as if he recognized a scent beneath the cold. And then Wyatt saw her. Standing near the supply truck was Corporal Mira Dawson, 26, the only female warrior assigned to their combat unit. She was smaller than most Marines, lean, almost delicate from afar. But there was something unyielding in the way she stood. Her dark brown hair was pulled tightly into a regulation bun, though loose strands framed a face shaped by exhaustion rather than youth. Her eyes, deep set and shadowed, carried a kind of quiet defiance muted by grief. Her skin was pale from weeks indoors, but the faded bruising along her jaw and the stiff curl of her posture suggested the kind of pain that had not fully healed. The scars she carried were not only visible. She moved carefully, hand occasionally brushing the left side of her abdomen as though checking whether the pain remained. Everyone on base had heard the story. Multiple knife wounds, deep, angled, defensive, sustained while rescuing 2 kidnapped children during a hostile standoff. A heroic act, yes, but also one that violated direct orders. The insurgents panicked. Shots erupted. 2 American Marines fell, hero and liability, savior and problem. The contradictions clung to her like smoke. Wyatt had seen her injury report. It was a miracle she survived. As Mira signed off a stack of paperwork, trying to ignore the stares drilling into her, Rook did something he almost never did. He broke formation. The dog trotted straight toward her, tail low but not fearful, head tilting with recognition. Mira Dawson. Wyatt murmured under his breath, watching the unexpected moment unfold. Rook stopped in front of her, sniffed her glove, then gently nudged her wrist. Mira froze. For a heartbeat, she looked like someone trying not to flinch at kindness after too much cruelty. Then her posture softened, barely, but enough for Wyatt to see. She lowered her hand, letting the dog rest his chin against her palm. A faint exhale left her as though she'd been holding her breath for days. Wyatt approached at last. "He usually doesn't do that," he said quietly. Mira looked up at him, her expression guarded. "Dogs don't lie," she answered. "He probably just smells the painkillers." But Wyatt knew better. Rook didn't comfort strangers. Or maybe she wasn't a stranger, not to Rook. And not to him. A moment of unease. As Mira turned to collect her duffel bag, Rook stiffened so suddenly that Wyatt felt the shift through the leash. The dog's ears pinned back, tail lowered, body leaning forward as if tracking a threat only he could sense. "Rook," Wyatt whispered. The German shepherd ignored him. Instead, he stared at Mira's left hip, at a specific spot on her coat, like something beneath the fabric triggered a memory or warning. A cold ripple moved through Wyatt's chest. The last time Rook behaved like this was 7 years ago, on a mountain road in a different war, seconds before an ambush tore Wyatt's unit apart. Whatever Rook recognized in Mira, it wasn't simple sympathy. It was connection, or danger. Sometimes they were the same thing. End of rehook, move to next act, but as Mira walked toward her assigned barracks, Rook slowly relaxed. The tension dissolved, leaving Wyatt with more questions than answers. He followed her with his gaze. She kept her head down, steps small but purposeful. People stepped aside without speaking to her, some whispering as she passed. Not cruelly, cowardly. The kind of silence that stings more than words. Wyatt found himself watching her more closely. The slight limp she tried to hide. The way she checked her surroundings, like someone who had spent too much time in hostile rooms, the faint tremor in her fingers when she thought no one was looking. Rook whined softly. Not in distress, in empathy. Wyatt exhaled. "Yeah," he murmured to the dog. "I see it too." Later that morning, Wyatt entered the cafeteria. The room smelled of burnt coffee, powdered eggs, and antiseptic, Northwind's signature perfume. Marines huddled by rank, habit, or ego. At the far corner, Sergeant Hill, a broad-shouldered man in his early 40s with a shaved head and a permanent scowl, leaned back with an air of entitlement. Deep lines etched across his face spoke of deployments that hardened him, but also of a bitterness he never bothered to hide. Hill didn't look cruel, only disappointed in the world, and determined to make everyone else feel the same. He noticed Mira walking past with her tray and muttered just loudly enough, "Hope today's training doesn't involve knives. We're short 2 men already." A few snickers followed. Mira stiffened but kept walking. She didn't confront them, didn't blink, just sat alone at a table by the wall. Wyatt set his tray down across from her without asking. She blinked in surprise. "You don't have to sit here." "Rook picked the seat," Wyatt replied. Rook had, in fact, simply sat next to Mira's leg and refused to move. A ghost of a smile touched Mira's mouth. "He's stubborn." "He's usually right," Wyatt said. She hesitated, lowering her gaze. "Then he's probably wrong this time." Wyatt didn't answer immediately. He ate calmly, giving her silence without pressure, a rare courtesy on a base where everyone demanded explanations from her. Finally, she asked, almost whispering, "Do you know what they're saying about me?" "Yes." "Do you believe it?" Wyatt paused. Rook looked up at him, as if reminding him of his own creed, truth over comfort. "I believe," Wyatt said slowly, "that pain changes people, but it doesn't lie." Mira's throat bobbed. She didn't speak again. When the meal ended, Mira stood and adjusted her coat. For a moment, the hem lifted just enough for Wyatt to see the faint outline of heavy medical bandages wrapping her torso. Fresh ones. Too fresh for someone fully cleared by command. Someone had rushed her back into duty. Someone who wanted her where she could fail publicly. Wyatt didn't know the full story yet, but he recognized the look in her eyes. It was the look of a soldier who had made the right choice on the wrong day and was now paying for it alone. Rook nudged Wyatt's knee as Mira walked away. Then, very softly, almost apologetically, the dog whimpered. The same sound he'd made 7 years ago, when Wyatt was pulled from the wreckage and realized half his team wasn't coming home. Wyatt stood, watching Mira disappear into the snowfall. The feeling in his chest, unsettling, familiar, tightened. Rook looked up at him. Wyatt gave a slow nod. "Yeah, buddy, we're not walking away from this." Snow fell with a softer rhythm the next morning, drifting sideways across the training yard like strands of pale silk. The storm had not yet arrived, but Northwind felt as if the world were holding its breath. Wyatt Cole stood by the armory steps, adjusting the straps of his Marpat vest, while Rook pressed close to his leg, watching the yard with the sharp, restless energy of a creature picking up signals no one else could hear. The unit was scheduled for cold weather mobility drills, light trekking, navigation, and movement through uneven snow terrain. Nothing complicated, nothing dangerous. But after yesterday's tension, the entire base felt wired, almost too alert for a simple training exercise. Corporal Mira Dawson arrived last, her posture rigid despite the visible strain in her abdomen. She wore a lighter load-bearing vest suited for her recovery, and the color of her skin had paled noticeably overnight. Yet she forced her gait into measured, controlled steps. Wyatt noted the tremor at her fingertips, quickly hidden when she realized he was watching. She acknowledged him silently and patted her gloves once, a grounding gesture. Captain Briggs, the unit commander, strode across the yard to address the squad. Briggs was in his late 40s, short but broad, with a shaved head and a tight, fox-like face. His eyes were a cold green, sharp enough to cut and just as indifferent. While many officers aged into gentleness, Briggs had grown more severe, his early years marked by a disastrous mission in Helmand Province, where a failed call cost him half his platoon. Since then, he trusted rules, not people. "Listen up," Briggs barked. "We're tracking into Ridgepoint Valley. Standard movement, 2 hours out, 2 back. Stay in formation, no deviations." He made a point of looking at Mira when he said the last sentence. Rook growled under his breath. Wyatt rested a hand on the dog's head, whispering, "Easy, buddy." The patrol began. They moved into the northern woods, the pines rising like solemn guardians on either side of the trail. The snow muffled sound, but Mira's breathing, shallow, controlled, reached Wyatt's ears whenever the wind died. He kept Rook on a short lead, the dog's tail held straight, every muscle wired. Wyatt navigated by instinct. Mira navigated by fear and focus, stepping exactly where the snow was firmest, refusing help even when the slope steepened. Twice, Wyatt slowed his pace to give her room. She never asked for it. She never broke cadence. Ahead of them, Sergeant Hill kept glancing over his shoulder with a scowl carved deep enough to freeze the air. Hill's resentment, once passive, now simmered. Something in Mira's resilience agitated him more than her existence. "Careful not to trip," he muttered when she passed a fallen branch. Wyatt narrowed his eyes. "Hill," he warned. Hill shrugged and marched on. 30 minutes into the trek, Rook abruptly stopped. Not slowed, stopped. His claws gripped the ice, hackles rising in a rigid line along his spine. He stared into the tree line as if something enormous stood there, silent and watching. Wyatt froze. The forest looked ordinary. Snow, branches, shifting frost. But Rook wasn't wrong. He was never wrong. "What is it?" Wyatt whispered. The dog took a step backward, tail lowered, ears pinned tight. Then, with no trigger Wyatt could detect, Rook pressed his nose against Mira's thigh, urgent, trembling, like he was shielding her from something invisible. Mira stiffened. Wyatt felt goosebumps crawl up his arms. Rook had only behaved like this twice in his life. Once before Wyatt was ambushed, and once when a trapped civilian was seconds from dying behind a collapsed wall. Something was coming. Something the forest felt first. And Mira, somehow, was the center of Rook's warning. Captain Briggs shouted from the front, snapping the spell, "Move up! Let's go!" Rook reluctantly resumed position. But Wyatt didn't miss the way his gaze kept drifting back toward the trees. Mira noticed too. For a brief second, she looked at Wyatt with a mixture of fear and gratitude. Two emotions she rarely allowed to surface. The valley narrowed as they entered Ridge Point, the slope rising sharply on one side and dropping into a frozen ravine on the other. The cold deepened, turning the air brittle. The squad moved in single file, boots crunching through crusted snow. Wyatt kept Mira directly in front of him. Rook kept her in his sight. When the group paused for hydration, Wyatt stepped toward her. "You should slow down." "I'm fine," Mira said too quickly. "You're pale." "It's just the cold." Wyatt's gaze dropped to her hand, pressing subtly into her left side. "It's your injury. It's pulling." She didn't deny it, but her voice stayed steady. "If I slow down, it proves them right." "Right about what?" "That I shouldn't be here." Wyatt studied her, the quiver behind her confidence, the stubborn fire in her eyes, the pain she hid under layers of discipline. "If you push until you break," he said, "you won't be here. That's not strength, Mira." For a moment, her expression almost changed, softening, cracking. But then the walls returned. "Corporal Dawson, Sergeant Hill, eyes forward," Briggs barked. "We're moving." They resumed their trek. The path began to climb again, the snow deepening. Mira's steps faltered twice. The second time, Wyatt caught her elbow without thinking. She jerked away, breath ragged. "I'm fine," she whispered, voice more wounded than angered. Rook nudged her leg again, quiet but insistent. Hill saw the stumble and smirked. "Weak." Wyatt stopped in his tracks. "Say that again." Hill turned, irritation flaring in his eyes. "She puts all of us at risk. If she hadn't—" "Hill!" Briggs barked. "Cut the chatter." But Hill glared at Mira with the full weight of blame, etched into his face. The patrol continued in icy silence until they reached the far ridge overlooking the valley. Snow swept across the rock ledges in shimmering sheets, and the December wind howled between the peaks like a distant warning. Briggs called for a 10-minute break. Mira sank onto a fallen log, shoulders trembling despite her attempts to hide it. Wyatt crouched beside her without asking. "You're burning up," he murmured. Her cheeks had flushed, breath fogging in uneven bursts. "It's just exertion," she insisted. He shook his head. "Your stitches didn't hold." She froze. Wyatt said it softly, not accusing, just truth. "I've seen that pain before," he continued. "I've carried it." She stared at him, something fragile flickering behind her eyes. Before she could respond, Rook barked sharply, once loud, urgent. Briggs spun around. "Control your damn dog, Cole." But Rook wasn't out of control. He was staring at the snowdrift by Mira's feet. The dog moved forward, sniffed, then began pawing furiously until a thin layer of ice broke and something metallic glinted beneath. A rusted wire, an old trip sensor, buried, forgotten, unless someone placed it recently. Wyatt's heart hammered. "Briggs, hold the squad back." Briggs frowned. "What is it now?" "An old perimeter alarm. This valley used to be part of the militia's routes during the dragnets 3 years ago." Hill snorted. "It's dead equipment, probably leftover junk." Wyatt knelt and lifted the wire carefully. It was cut deliberately and recently. Mira stood slowly, the gaze sharpening. "Someone was here." "Within the last week?" Wyatt confirmed. Briggs's face tightened. "Enough paranoia. We're heading back." But Wyatt didn't miss the tremor in the captain's voice. And Rook didn't stop staring at Mira, as if the discovery was not random but connected to her in ways none of them understood yet. The hike back was faster, more tense. Mira's injury worsened, but she refused help. Rook walked glued to her side, every sense heightened. By the time they reached the base perimeter, dusk had swallowed the sky in bruised shades of purple and gray. Briggs dismissed the squad with an irritated wave. "Clean your gear and report tomorrow at 600. Hill left without a word. The others scattered. Wyatt watched Mira struggle down the walkway, her steps unsteady. He approached again, slower this time. "You need the medic." "I need—" Mira paused, voice breaking in a way she couldn't fully hide. "To not be a burden." "You're not," Wyatt said. Rook pressed his head gently to Mira's hip. Something inside her cracked, just a fracture, but visible. She whispered, "Why does he keep choosing me?" Wyatt answered honestly, quietly, "Because he sees something you're trying very hard to hide." Mira swayed slightly, clutching her ribs, eyes shining not with tears, but with fear of what she might reveal. Before she could speak, an alarm wailed across the base. Sharp, urgent. A breach. On the northern side. Right where their patrol had passed. Rook snarled. Mira's eyes widened. Wyatt grabbed his radio. The quiet morning was over. The alarm echoed through Northwind like a blade dragged across steel, slicing through the quiet dusk and jolting every Marine into motion. Wyatt Cole sprinted across the yard without hesitation, Rook bounding beside him with explosive urgency. Snow whipped sideways under the floodlights, turning the world into a blur of white noise. Behind them, Corporal Mira Dawson struggled to keep pace, one arm braced around her abdomen, but determination pushing her forward long after pain should have stopped her. The breach alert had come from the northern perimeter, exactly where Rook had reacted earlier, exactly where the cut trip sensor lay buried under the morning frost. Wyatt's instincts twisted tight in his chest. Something about the timing wasn't random. Someone had waited for their patrol to leave, then circled back. 2 Marines from the gate team met them at the snowbank. One of them, Private First Class Jenna Marsh, was new to the unit. She stood barely 5'3", slim, a redhead with pale skin that flushed quickly in the cold. Her freckles seemed brighter against the fear sharpening her features. "Sir," she panted, breath fogging. "Motion alert by Sector 13. We saw a silhouette but lost visual. We haven't engaged." Her voice was steady but young, the kind of young that hadn't yet faced real danger. Wyatt nodded. "Good work not firing. Perimeter lockdown active?" "Activated 5 minutes ago," Marsh replied, straightening instinctively at Wyatt's tone. She carried her rifle with both hands, knuckles white not from cold, but from adrenaline. Captain Briggs arrived moments later, irritation carved into each step. He wasn't built for running, and sweat streaked down his temples despite the freezing air. "Report." Wyatt gave a concise summary of the earlier sensor discovery. Briggs's face reddened. "Old militia junk doesn't justify locking down an entire base." "Sir," Wyatt said evenly, "the sensor wire was cut recently, and now there's movement." Briggs dismissed the idea with a wave. "Cole, you're seeing ghosts, probably an animal. We sweep once, then return to barracks." Rook growled softly, not at the woods, but at Briggs. Wyatt felt the tension radiating from his dog, like heat. "With respect, Captain," Wyatt said, refusing to back down. "Rook doesn't alert for nothing." Briggs glared at him, then at Mira, who leaned heavily against a post but refused to sit. "Fine. Cole, you take Dawson. Your dog too. But if this turns out to be a deer, you're both on midnight duty for a week." Wyatt didn't react. Mira briefly closed her eyes, not in dread but in focus, gathering strength she barely had left. They moved into the forest. The snow muffled sound, but Wyatt's breath still felt too loud. The trees formed tall silhouettes in the blue night, branches bowing under the weight of ice. Rook sniffed the air, posture rigid, tail level. Not hunting, not curious, but tracking. Mira walked beside Wyatt, steps wavering. "I can still fight," she whispered, almost pleading with herself more than with him. "I didn't doubt that," he said quietly. "But you need to tell me if you feel faint. That would require admitting weakness." Wyatt glanced at her. "Weakness is lying to yourself. Pain is just information." She almost smiled, a fragile, crooked thing. "Is that how you survived Helmand?" The question hit him like a sudden gust. She wasn't supposed to know about Helmand. Only a few people on base had read that file. "How do you—" But Rook suddenly stiffened and crouched low. Wyatt froze. Ahead, through the drifting snow, a small shape moved. Not enemy, not adult, not even threatening. A child. A little girl stood half-hidden behind a pine trunk, maybe 9 or 10 years old, with tangled dark hair and a purple winter coat several sizes too big. Her face was pale, lips trembling not from cold, but from terror. And in her arms, Wyatt's breath caught, she clutched a teddy bear missing one button eye. "What in—" Mira whispered, stumbling forward a step. Rook didn't growl. Instead, he lowered himself slowly, ears flattening, tail lowering until his muscular frame became gentle, protective. The girl stared at him with wide, tear-glazed eyes. And then she whispered, barely audible, "Are you the ones who save people?" The question hit harder than any ambush. Wyatt felt the forest contract around them, as if the mountain itself leaned in to hear her answer. End of rehook. Tension shifts. Wyatt slowly lowered his rifle and raised a hand. "Hey there. We're not here to hurt you. What's your name?" The girl hesitated. then stepped forward just enough for them to see the bruising on her cheekbone, yellow-gray, days old. "My name is Lila," she whispered. I ran. I didn't know where else to go." Mira knelt, wincing but pushing through it. "It's okay, Lila. You found us. You're safe now." Lila shook her head violently. "No. No one's safe. He's coming." Wyatt's muscles tightened. "Who's coming?" But Lila's eyes drifted over his shoulder, toward the ridge where the trip sensor had been cut. Mira stiffened. Someone's tracking her. Snow gathered in the folds of Lila's oversized coat. She hugged the teddy bear closer. "He said he'd find me. He said he always does." Captain Briggs pushed through the trees then, panting from exertion. "Cole, what did you—" He froze when he saw the girl. "Why is there a civilian child on my perimeter?" Wyatt straightened. "Sir, she's injured and scared. We can't bring unknown civilians inside the base on a breach alert." Briggs snapped. "Protocol." "Sir," Wyatt interrupted, quiet but unwavering. "Protocol does not override immediate threat to life." Briggs opened his mouth to argue, but Lila flinched so violently at the sound that even he faltered. Her fingers dug into the bear's torn fur like she feared someone might rip it away again. Rook stepped in front of her, planting himself like a living shield. Wyatt knelt beside Lila. "You said someone is coming. Who?" Lila swallowed hard. "My dad." Mira blinked. "Your father?" Lila shook her head. "He's not really my dad. He took me. He said I belong to him now." Cold dropped into Wyatt's stomach. A kidnapping, a runaway, and a man hunting her through the mountains. Before Wyatt could speak, Rook lifted his head and growled, low, unmistakable, directed toward the tree line. Then a distant crunch of snow echoed. Slow, heavy, purposeful. Someone was out there. Briggs immediately raised his weapon. "Cole! Dawson! Get the child back to base!" Wyatt scooped Lila into his arms. She clutched the bear tightly, burying her face in Wyatt's shoulder. Mira stumbled forward, grimacing, but stayed at his side. Rook trotted ahead, nose low, hackles stiff but ears forward, tracking, guiding, protecting. The trek back felt longer than the entire day's patrol. Wyatt's heart hammered with every step, aware that whoever was following Lila wasn't far behind. As they neared the edge of the forest, floodlights flickered through the branches. Safety waited ahead. But just before they stepped into the open, Lila whispered into Wyatt's collar. "He told me, if I ever ran, he'd burn the place down where they tried to hide me." Wyatt slowed, tightening his hold around her. Mira's breath caught. Rook growled again. Wyatt stared at the base lights glowing through the trees. A thought colder than the snow settled in his chest. Someone had cut that old trip sensor on purpose. Someone had stalked the valley before they arrived. And someone already knew where the base was. And now that someone was coming, snow hammered against the outer walls of North Wind as Wyatt Cole carried Lila across the threshold of the operations building. The warmth inside fogged his vision, but the girl's thin arms remained locked around his neck. Rook followed at his heel, his paws silent on the tile floor despite the tension rippling visibly through his muscles. Corporal Mira Dawson trailed close behind, one hand pressed to her abdomen, each breath sharp and shallow, yet determined. The operations room snapped to full alert as soon as they entered. Monitors glowed with perimeter maps. Marines moved briskly between stations. The atmosphere felt tighter, sharper, like a wire pulled too far. Captain Briggs stormed in moments later, cheeks flushed with irritation and cold. "Someone tell me why a child is in my operations center during a breach incident." Wyatt ignored the bite in his tone. He lowered Lila onto a bench. Up close, she looked even smaller. Thin limbs, dark circles under her eyes, a fading bruise along her jawline. Her purple coat swallowed her frame like a shield far too big for her fears. "She's injured and being hunted," Wyatt said, standing tall between Briggs and the girl. "She ran for help." Briggs scowled. "Help should have been routed through civilian agencies. We are not a refugee shelter." "She wasn't safe in town," Mira said, stepping forward though her voice trembled. "She said the man coming after her promised to burn down any place that tried to hide her." "Kids exaggerate," Briggs retorted. Lila flinched as if slapped. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Before Briggs could continue, a new figure hurried through the door. Lieutenant Amber Nash, 30 years old, dressed in a neat Navy intelligence uniform, dark hair pulled into a low, efficient tail. Her posture carried calm authority, and her sharp, dark eyes scanned the room quickly before locking onto Lila. "What's the situation?" Nash asked. Wyatt summarized in a concise, measured tone. Nash knelt in front of Lila, moving slowly so as not to startle her. "Sweetheart, my name is Amber," she said gently. "You're safe. Can you tell me what happened?" Lila hesitated, then clutched her teddy bear tighter. "He took me. He said I was his. I ran when he was asleep." Nash nodded, expression softening but eyes hardening with understanding. "Did he hurt you, Lila?" The girl's silence was answer enough. Briggs groaned. "We don't have time for this. We will make time." Nash cut in sharply, rising with subtle but undeniable authority. "This is a federal offense, and if the intruder followed her into a restricted military zone, that makes it a national security concern." Wyatt didn't hide his satisfaction at the captain's silencing. They turned to the perimeter screens. On one camera, the northern tree line flickered with static. A faint, grainy silhouette drifted in and out of the lens. Too far to identify, but tall, deliberate somehow, patient. Wyatt leaned closer. "He's testing our boundary." Briggs scoffed, "Or wandering." But Rook growled at the same moment, low and certain. Wyatt trustfully placed a hand on the dog's back. "He's not wandering," Wyatt murmured. "He's waiting." Mira swallowed hard, sweat beading along her hairline despite the cold. "He won't stop," she said softly. "Not if he thinks she belongs to him." Briggs's impatience flared. "We're wasting time. Nash, run a basic background. Cole Dawson, you're dismissed. Get the child to the barracks infirmary and keep your dog in check." Wyatt didn't argue, but something about Briggs's tone, dismissive, irritated, felt wrong. This wasn't just a kidnapping anymore. Something more deliberate was creeping toward them, and the captain refused to see it. Wyatt lifted Lila again. She buried her face in his collar, cold fingers trembling. Mira stepped beside him without being asked, and together, the three of them, with Rook guiding ahead, moved into the dim hallway. As the door swung shut behind them, Wyatt thought he heard the wind shift, low and eerie, like a whisper crawling across snow. But it wasn't the wind. It was Rook. The dog froze halfway down the hall, ears erect, tail stiffening, body leaning toward the exit they had just left. Wyatt stopped. "Rook!" The dog didn't blink. His gaze burned into the metal door. Then, without warning, Rook began backing up slowly, his gaze never leaving the sealed entrance, as if something on the other side was moving closer. Without sound, without breath, without weight. Lila felt it too. Her small fingers dug into Wyatt's shoulder. "He's here," she whispered. "He always finds me, even when it's quiet, especially when it's quiet." Mira's face drained of color. "Wyatt, something's wrong." Rook barked a single sharp, explosive warning, one Wyatt had only heard twice before. The bark that preceded death. End of Hook. The secret hallway. Wyatt scanned the corridor, senses on full alert. Move, now. He didn't run, but his stride doubled in length as they reached the infirmary wing. Inside, the lights flickered, the generator straining under the storm outside. A medic hurried over, a man in his 50s named Dr. Stephen Rourke, tall and stooped, with gray hair and tired eyes shaped by decades of military service. His kindness had survived the years, but his face bore the hollowed lines of someone who had lost more patience than he cared to count. "Good Lord," Rourke murmured as he approached Mira. "You're bleeding again." "I'm fine," she lied, immediately wobbling. Wyatt caught her by the elbow before she fell. Rourke approached Lila next. "Sweetheart, I'm a doctor. May I take a look?" Lila nodded, still shaking. Rourke remained by Wyatt's side, pacing in tight circles, anxiety manifesting in restless movement. He kept checking the hallway repeatedly, as though the walls themselves were unsafe. Rourke led Lila to a chair. As he gently examined the bruise on her cheek, he asked, "Is your mother nearby, Lila, or anyone who cares for you?" "No," she whispered. "Just him. He said he owned me." Rourke's hand froze. His expression darkened in a rare flash of anger. "Wyatt," he said quietly, "this girl has been abused for a long time." Wyatt's pulse tightened. From the corner of the room, Mira watched with hollow, haunted eyes. Something about Lila's trembling, the bruise, the terror, triggered an echo inside her, a memory too close to the surface. Wyatt stepped toward her. "Mira?" Her voice cracked. "This was me. Years ago." She swallowed. "Not kidnapped. But no one believed me either." Wyatt placed a hand on her shoulder. She didn't pull away this time. Before either could speak again, the lights flickered once more, harder this time. Then the base alarm blared. Rourke flinched. "We've got a second breach warning. Inside perimeter." Wyatt's chest tightened. "Inside?" Rourke snarled as if confirming the worst. Footsteps thundered outside. Briggs's voice bellowed through the hallway. "Cole, Dawson, report to operations. Now." Wyatt exchanged a look with Mira, then with Rourke, then with Lila. Something was unfolding faster than they could react. Wyatt gripped his rifle. Mira steadied herself. Rourke growled low. And as the three of them prepared to move, Lila whispered, "He's not coming alone this time." The building felt suddenly colder, as if someone had opened a door no one could see. The base siren screamed again, this time lower, longer, as if warning the ground itself to brace. Wyatt Cole felt the floor vibrate beneath his boots as he sprinted back toward operations, Rourke bounding ahead with explosive urgency. The German shepherd's sable coat bristled along his spine, his pupils sharp and dilated, tracking something Wyatt couldn't yet see. Corporal Mira Dawson pushed herself to move, despite the blood soaking through her bandage. She leaned against the wall once, twice, but she refused Wyatt's attempts to help. Stubbornness kept her upright. Fear kept her moving. Up ahead, Lieutenant Amber Nash appeared at the intersection, her dark ponytail swinging as she turned sharply toward them. "We have movement inside the outer corridor," she said. Her voice was calm, but her normally steady hands fidgeted with a memo pad, an uncharacteristic tremor Wyatt instantly noticed. Sensors picked up steps, but no heat signature. Wyatt frowned. No heat? Could be malfunction. Nash shook her head. 3 sensors, 3 different halls, all the same. Rourke growled, low and rumbling, pressing his body closer to Wyatt's leg. Lila, clinging to Mira's sleeve, let out a small whimper. Her eyes reflected a fear far too old for a child. "That's how he walks," she whispered. Nash crouched. "Who?" "The man. Lila murmured, voice so thin it nearly disappeared. He walks without sound, without breath, like he doesn't know how to be real. Wyatt exchanged a tense look with Nash. Mira's eyes flickered with pain and dread all at once. Let's move, Wyatt said. Operations first. They raced through the corridor and burst into the command room. Captain Briggs stood near the main monitor wall, barking useless orders. His face was red, neck veined, his short stature vibrating with frustration rather than fear. He turned sharply as Wyatt approached. About time, Cole. You and that damn dog. Captain, Nash interrupted with a crisp authority that silenced him instantly. We need full lockdown of sectors 6 through 9, and I need access to the satellite thermal grid for the nearby forest. Briggs glared. We don't even know if... We know enough, Nash snapped. Before Briggs could argue, a Marine at the analytics console, Specialist Grant Avery, a lanky man in his late 20s with sandy hair and square glasses, lifted his hand. Sirs, ma'am, you might want to see this. Avery's voice was calm but thin, a tone developed by people who dealt with horror through silence. On screen, a patch of snowy terrain appeared, Sector 6. Footprints dotted the ground in a straight line, large, precise, slow. Avery zoomed in. No body heat surrounded them, no visible figure. Just prints appearing one by one, as if each step was made by something the camera could not see. Wyatt's throat tightened. How long ago? Avery swallowed. Live feed, Sergeant. Mira's hand trembled against her abdomen. He's inside the perimeter. Briggs scoffed. Weather distortion, that's all. But Lila pressed against Wyatt, shaking violently. That's him. He always walks ahead of himself, like he's hunting shadows. Rook barked sharply. The same bark he used before impact, before danger, before things went terribly wrong. Wyatt felt the air thicken. Something was here, not just a man. Something shaped by obsession, violence, and a kind of patience that was almost inhuman. Suddenly, Lila grabbed Wyatt's sleeve with both hands. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with revelation. I know why he's here, she whispered. He wasn't after me. He was after her. She turned, not toward Wyatt, not toward Nash, but toward Mira. The room stilled. Even the screens seemed to pause. Mira blinked, stunned. Me? Lila nodded. He saw you once, in the house, when you took the children. He said you were the girl who ruined everything. Wyatt felt a chill ripple up his spine. Mira staggered backward, gripping the edge of the table. And Rook. Rook moved instantly, stepping between Mira and the rest of the room, tail stiff, stance protective, as though the truth itself had summoned something closer. End of rehook. Danger tightens. Wyatt placed a hand on Mira's shoulder. You didn't ruin anything. You saved 2 kids. But men died, Mira whispered. He might have been there. Lila nodded quickly. He said the Marines were thieves, that they stole what was his. Captain Briggs huffed. Nonsense. That's... But before he could finish, Specialist Avery's voice cracked across the room. Sir, Sector 9 camera, look. On the next screen, something moved. Not fully visible, like a shadow inside snow. But a tall male silhouette stepped past the outer fence, head tilted as if listening. Long arms, slow step. He moved like a man who enjoyed being followed, or feared. Wyatt felt a coil tighten in his chest. This man wasn't running. He was searching, methodical, determined, certain. Thermals still show nothing, Avery added, voice shaking now. Briggs finally broke. Deploy a fire team. Cole, you take Dawson. Nash. No. Wyatt's voice was iron. Mira is injured. I'll take Nash and 2 others. Dawson stays here with the child. Mira lifted her chin. I can still... No. Wyatt didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You collapse out there, you die. And then Lila loses someone else she trusted. Mira froze. The truth anchored her. She sagged into the chair behind her, breath trembling. Nash stepped forward. I'll lead the intel track. We need non-lethal capture protocols ready. Whoever he is, he knows this terrain. Avery lifted a hand. I'll run thermal scrubbing filters. Maybe we can catch a trace. Briggs jabbed a finger toward Wyatt. You take Rook and keep the perimeter tight. No engagement unless necessary. Wyatt nodded once. Rook stood beside him, waiting for the order, body rigid as wire. They moved quickly. Wyatt, Nash, 2 Marines from the Ready Squad, into the storm. The air outside punched with cold, but their breaths felt hotter, harsher, adrenaline tightening their lungs. Snow churned under their boots as Rook led them toward Sector 9. He sniffed the wind, legs stretching, head low, tail straight. Wyatt felt every vibration through the leash. Rook was tracking something powerful, something wrong. They approached the fence. Footprints continued along the perimeter. But then, without transition, they vanished. Nash whispered, He jumped? No, Wyatt murmured. He changed direction. How do you know? Before he could answer, Rook jerked left so hard Wyatt nearly lost grip. The shepherd lunged toward the tree line, teeth bared, barking like he was staring at a ghost. Wyatt followed his line of sight. And there, half hidden in swirling snow, stood a figure. A tall man, broad shoulders, a long coat torn at the sleeves, a scraggly beard covering a gaunt, weather-worn face. Eyes dark and sunken, but burning with feverish obsession. He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He simply lifted one hand and pointed directly at Mira's window in the operations building. Wyatt raised his rifle. Down on the ground, now. The man smiled. Slow, eerie, a smile without warmth. Then he whispered something, too soft to hear, and stepped backward into the snow. The storm swallowed him whole. Rook lunged forward, barking furiously, trying to follow the tracks. But the prints were already gone, like the man had walked without weight, without presence, without heat. Nash whispered, horrified, What kind of man leaves no trace? Wyatt stared into the white emptiness and answered quietly, The kind that believes he owns people. The storm thickened through the night, swallowing north wind in sheets of white that seemed almost alive. Wyatt Cole stood in the dim hallway outside the operations room, snow melting on his boots, fingers still trembling with leftover adrenaline. Rook paced at his side, tail rigid, ears scanning every vibration in the walls. The German shepherd's muscles twitched as though anticipating a threat in every shadow. Inside, Mira Dawson sat on a cot that had been pulled into a quiet corner. Her face was drained of color, her breathing shallow. Though she tried to hide it, the pain etched itself across the lines beneath her eyes. Wyatt approached with deliberate softness, not wanting to startle her. You shouldn't be sitting up, he said. I shouldn't be bleeding either, Mira answered, voice low and brittle. But here we are. The attempt at humor sounded like a fractured glass edge. Wyatt pulled over a chair and sat facing her. Rook settled at Mira's feet, head resting lightly against her boot, watching her with an expression that almost resembled concern. The dog rarely showed this gentleness to anyone but Wyatt. Yet for Mira, something instinctive shifted in him, like he sensed her wounds long before she spoke of them. Across the room, Lila sat curled under a blanket, clutching her teddy bear. Nash remained close, protective, her warm amber eyes scanning the monitors. She had loosened her ponytail, letting some strands fall around her face, a rare sign that even she was rattled. Captain Briggs paced like an irritated bulldog, snapping at anyone within reach. He had turned redder as the night pressed on, sweat shining at his hairline despite the cold. His temper simmered just beneath the surface, fueled by fear he refused to acknowledge. Wyatt kept his attention on Mira. "Tell me what he meant," he said quietly. "The man Lila saw. She said he knew you." Mira looked away, tension tightening her shoulders. "It was the last deployment," she murmured. "The raid where I broke orders." Her voice cracked slightly. "The rebel cell had 2 children. They were bait. They wanted to lure Marines. And I fell for it." Wyatt's brow tightened. "You saved those kids. And 4 Marines died because the militants used the chaos to ambush us," Mira whispered. "I thought I killed the cell leader that day. But I saw a face, just before the explosion. A man standing in the doorway, watching me drag the children out. He didn't fire. He didn't run." Wyatt's pulse slowed. "He watched you. He remembered me." Mira's eyes glistened. "I think I was the reason he survived that day. He was studying me. And now he's here." Rook lifted his head at that moment, ears suddenly erect. His gaze snapped toward the far hallway. His entire body stiffened. Wyatt stood instantly. "Rook!" The dog took one slow, deliberate step toward the darkened corridor. Nash looked up. "What is it?" Rook's growl rose from somewhere deep, ancient, primal, protective. The lights flickered, the air shifted. Cold seeped through the vents. Then Lila whispered, "He's saying her name." The entire room stilled. "Lila," Nash said softly. "What do you hear?" The girl's eyes watered. She hugged her bear tighter. "He always says their names first," she whispered, trembling. "The ones he wants to break. He whispers them into the cold, like he's calling them home." Wyatt's skin chilled. Mira's lips parted, breath trembling. "You hear him now?" Lila nodded. "He's saying your name, but not the way people say it. He says it like it belongs to him." Rook lunged toward the hallway, barking furiously. "End of rehook." The truth begins to take shape. Wyatt grabbed his rifle and sprinted forward, Nash close behind. They peered into the long corridor, dim, flickering, filled with a hum of storm-stressed generators. Nothing moved, no shadow, no breath. But Rook was locked on something neither human nor animal eyes could see. "Cole?" Nash whispered. "I think the man knows the base layout. He's not trying to break in. He's trying to break her." She pointed back toward Mira. Wyatt swallowed hard, which means he'll come straight for her if we let him. Briggs stomped forward, frustrated. All of this panic over a ghost story. We have cameras, we have motion sensors, we have... A security alarm cut him off. Sector 11, inside the inner wall, too close. A new voice crackled over the intercom. Sergeant Hale, a broad-shouldered, square-jawed Marine with a trimmed ginger beard and eyes like cold steel. Hale was tough, professional, and calm. The kind of man whose father died in service, yet who returned to the Corps, maybe because he believed duty was a form of grief made useful. "Operations, this is Hale. I've got movement near the old logistics tunnel." Wyatt stiffened. "Someone accessing the tunnel? It was sealed years ago." "Yeah, well," Hale said, breath ragged, "it's open now." Nash's face went pale. That tunnel leads directly under the infirmary wing. Wyatt's blood turned to ice. He's going for Mira. Rook barked once, a loud, violent warning. Wyatt sprinted back into the operations room. Mira looked up, eyes widening as she saw his expression. What happened? There's a tunnel access under this wing, Wyatt said, and it's open. For a moment, Mira didn't breathe. Lila whimpered and hid her face. Rook pressed against Wyatt's side, vibrating with the need to move. Everyone to defensive positions, Nash ordered sharply. Briggs, seal doors. Avery, switch to manual surveillance. Hale, fall back to the infirmary from the west corridor. Do not engage alone. Briggs sputtered, but Nash's authority overrode him. Marines rushed to form barricades. The storm outside howled like some ancient beast pressing its weight against the base walls. Wyatt grabbed Mira's arm. We're moving you. Now. Mira hesitated. Pride, pain, guilt all colliding in her expression. But when Lila reached out and touched her hand, whispering, "Please don't let him take you," Mira finally nodded. Wyatt helped her stand. She wavered but found her balance. Rook stayed glued to her side, posture coiled and ready to strike. They moved down the hallway that led to the emergency barracks, a safer, sealed wing. Snow rattled against windows like fingers tapping a warning. Halfway down the corridor, Wyatt froze. A sound. Soft, calm, deliberate. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps coming from behind the metal panel that covered the tunnel hatch. Mira tensed, hand flying to her side. Nash's fingers tightened on her sidearm. Lila whimpered once, then buried her face in Mira's leg. Wyatt lifted his rifle. Rook lowered his body, ready to attack. The footsteps stopped. A shadow moved behind the panel. Tall, long-armed, head tilted, as if listening for their breaths. Then a voice, hoarse, quiet, not entirely human, slid through the crack beneath the panel. Mira. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't whispered. It was spoken like a promise. Mira's knees buckled. Wyatt caught her before she fell. Lila sobbed, clutching Mira's coat. Rook snarled, teeth bared, body trembling with fury. The metal panel creaked, shifting outward, just an inch. Just enough to let the cold seep through like a warning. Wyatt positioned himself in front of Mira and Lila. His voice was steady. Steel. You come through that door, he said. You're not leaving. The shadow paused. Then, the panel eased back into place. The footsteps receded. Slow, hungry, patient. Wyatt didn't lower his rifle until the hallway fell silent again. Nash exhaled shakily. He's testing us. No, Wyatt said. He's claiming something, and he thinks Mira belongs to him. Mira shuddered. He's not going to stop. Rook pressed against her leg, warm, solid, alive, growling at the empty air as if the darkness still held a heartbeat. Wyatt placed a reassuring hand on Mira's back, guiding her toward safety. Then we don't stop either, he said quietly. Outside, the storm raged harder. Inside, something darker than the storm had finally found its way in. Snow battered the barracks wing in relentless waves, as if the storm itself was trying to scrape the walls clean. Wyatt Cole stood just inside the reinforced door, gripping his rifle hard enough for his knuckles to pale beneath the skin. Rook pressed close to his leg, shoulders tight, tail stiff, breath sharp. The German shepherd wasn't merely alert. He was in combat focus mode, his instincts burning like a live wire. Whatever lurked in that tunnel hadn't left the base. It had simply moved its hunt elsewhere. Behind Wyatt, Mira Dawson sat on the edge of a steel-frame cot, her breath shallow. Sweat glistened along her temples despite the cold. She pressed a trembling hand to her abdomen, where the reopened wound had soaked through her bandage. Even like this, her eyes flicked constantly to the hallway, watching, waiting, fighting the instinct to run or collapse. Lila clung to Mira's sleeve, face buried in her coat. The child's thin shoulders shook under the weight of fear she had carried for far too long. Her teddy bear, worn down to patches, lay between them like a fragile shield. Lieutenant Amber Nash paced the small room with a tension uncommon for her. A woman who usually moved with precise, analytical grace now carried a restless energy. Her steps sharp, her face pale under the fluorescence. Nash was used to dealing with human threats, predictable patterns. What they were dealing with now was something else entirely. Obsession, psychological warfare. A predator who moved as if the world belonged to him. Captain Briggs barged into the doorway, red-faced and furious as always. "Cole, I told you to hold the barricade, not run off like some damn hero." Wyatt didn't respond. His silence only enraged Briggs further. Before Briggs could bark another order, Sergeant Hale strode in behind him. Hale, tall, ginger-bearded, shoulders like stacked stone, had a quiet authority that didn't need yelling. His voice rolled out deep and even. "Sir, with respect, we've got bigger concerns than your pride right now." Briggs froze, stunned at being challenged. Hale continued, eyes narrowing at the frost, creeping along the seams of the tunnel hatch down the hall. "That man down there? He's not here for the base. He's here for the girl." He nodded toward Mira. Wyatt stepped closer protectively. "He's already at the inner access point. What's our plan for containment?" Before anyone could answer, the hallway lights flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. Nash checked the monitor feed on her tablet. Sector 11 cameras are still down. He's using the storm as cover, or he knows how to disable thermal visibility. "Knows how?" Briggs barked. "A drifter?" Nash exhaled slowly. "No. Someone with training." Wyatt turned toward her. "Military?" "Not our side," she murmured. "But someone who understands infiltration." Mira lowered her head. "I should have finished him when I had the chance." "Don't say that." Wyatt snapped, louder than intended. His voice softened after. "You did what was right." She looked up, eyes shimmering painfully. "And now he's here because of me." Rook let out a low, urgent whine and pressed his head against her knee, almost as though he was telling her she wasn't alone. The dog's amber eyes locked onto Mira with a tenderness that caught her off guard. She tried to smile, but her lips shook. Wyatt watched her carefully. "You didn't bring him here. He followed his own darkness." Then came a sound like something dragging lightly along metal. A faint scrape, too slow for an animal, too deliberate for the wind. The entire room froze. Hale's hand tightened around his sidearm. Briggs stepped back instinctively. Nash's breath stalled in her chest. Wyatt raised his rifle. Lila whimpered. Rook rose to his feet, every hair on his body standing like needles. The sound came again. Scrape, pause, scrape. The paneling along the hallway vibrated with it. Rook suddenly stepped forward and pawed at the floor, scratching 3 times, pausing, scratching again. Wyatt blinked. The dog had never done that before in a threat scenario. Lila's eyes widened. "That's him," she whispered. "He makes that pattern. The scraping. 3 in 1. 3 in 1. Mira swallowed hard. "Why?" Lila's voice dropped to a tremble. "He says it's the rhythm of remembering. The rhythm of a name he wants to keep." Wyatt felt something cold coil up his spine. Rook's scratching wasn't confusion. It was recognition. A mimicry of the sound behind the wall. As though the creature stalking them was teaching them how to fear him. End of rehook. The preparations, Wyatt immediately shifted into command mode. "Hale, guard the south end. Nash, get me manual route schematics. Briggs..." Briggs snapped. "I'm your superior officer. And right now you're also in the way," Wyatt said, voice calm but lethal. "We have a man accessing sealed parts of the base. You want protocol? Here it is. Fall back and secure the secondary door. Do it or stay out of the path." Briggs paled, rage and fear warring in his expression, before he stormed away, muttering under his breath. Nash scrolled through a digital blueprint. "There are 3 access points from the tunnel into the infirmary wing. We sealed 1. 2 remain." "And which one is closest to her?" Wyatt asked. Nash hesitated. "The one 30 feet behind you." Wyatt turned slowly. The wall behind Mira and Lila was quiet. Too quiet. Hale spoke carefully. "We need to move them." Wyatt nodded. "Let's go." He and Hale helped Mira stand. She staggered once, gripping Wyatt's arm. "I can walk," she murmured. "I know," he said gently. "Let me help anyway." Rook stayed glued to Lila's side as they guided both of them into the emergency barracks hallway. The deeper they went, the tighter the walls felt, like the base itself was holding its breath. Halfway down the hall, Nash motioned for them to stop. "I'm getting interference on the comms." "From the storm?" Hale asked. Nash shook her head slowly. "No, it's internal." The lights dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again. A cold draft seeped under the door ahead. Wyatt positioned himself up front. Hale took rear guard. Nash moved in between, weapon raised. Mira leaned heavily against the wall, Lila clinging to her side. Rook snarled, not at the door, but at the ceiling, as though sensing weight above them. Wyatt's voice dropped. "He's moving through the vents." Nash checked her scanner. "He's bypassing heat detection. That's not possible unless—" Hale finished the thought. "Unless he's insulated head to toe." Wyatt lowered his voice even more. "Or unless he doesn't care if he freezes." Mira shuddered violently. "He's not like other men. He's not afraid of pain." Lila whispered, "He told me he couldn't feel it anymore." Wyatt's stomach twisted. A man who had burned out his own senses, who survived an explosion Mira thought killed him. A man fueled by fixation, not logic. He wasn't just hunting, he was unraveling, and unraveling men didn't stop. They burst into the emergency safe room, a reinforced chamber with only one door. Hale sealed it behind them. Mira sank to the floor, clutching her abdomen. Lila curled against her. Rook lay in front of them, body stiff, head raised, eyes locked on the door. Wyatt knelt beside Mira, brushing snow from her sleeve. "We hold here. We wait for backup." Hale nodded. "I'll cover the door." Nash stood near the comms panel, working to reboot the scrambled channel. The storm roared outside. The room hummed softly. For a moment, silence sat heavy. Then, a single tap echoed through the metal door. Not loud, not frantic, slow, measured. 3 taps. Pause. 1 tap. Wyatt raised his rifle. Rook's lips curled over his teeth. Mira's breath broke violently. Lila sobbed into her coat. Hale stepped forward. Then the voice came again, hoarse, hungry, too close. "Mira, sometimes the greatest battles are not fought on distant fields, but inside the quiet corners of a person's heart. And sometimes, when the night feels heaviest, a light appears in the most unexpected form. A loyal dog, a brave soul refusing to give up, or a moment of strength that can only be described as a gift from God. If this story reminded you that miracles still happen, even through broken people and small, ordinary acts of courage, I invite you to share your thoughts below. Tell us where you're watching from. Tell us who you're praying for. Or tell us about a moment in your life when something greater than yourself stepped in. Your voice matters here. Your story can strengthen someone else. If you feel called to support our mission of telling stories about hope, courage, and quiet miracles, please comment, share this video, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another chapter. May God watch over you and those you love. May He guide your steps, guard your home, and place His hand over your family as you walk through whatever battles life sets before you. Thank you for being here. Stay safe, stay faithful, and may blessings follow you wherever you go.